Well, it is the time of year, Dan, when people do those wicked little things called New Year's resolutions.
Yeah.
They resolve to do all kinds of wonderful things, to be better at things that they have always intended to do. And one of the main things, one of the most popular of all resolutions, is the resolution to save more money. But that's not always easy to do. You have to remember to do it. You have to think about squirreling things away. You've got to figure out where you're going to invest your money. It can be a trick. It can be very messy, and all of that difficulty can result in you not actually saving the money that you intended to save.
Acorns makes it easy to start automatically saving and investing so your money has a chance to grow for you, your kids, and your retirement. You don't need to be an expert. Acorns will recommend a diversified portfolio that fits you and your money goals. You don't need to be rich. Acorns lets you invest with the spare money you've got right now. You can start with $5 or even just your spare change. You don't need a ton of time. You can create your Acorns account and start investing in just 5 minutes. And you don't need to feel like financial wellness is impossible. Acorns gives you small, simple steps to get you and your money back on track. Basically, Acorns does the hard part so that you can give your money a chance to grow.
Yeah, head to acorns.com/dogma or download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today.
Paid non-client endorsement. Compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Tier 1 compensation provided. Investing involves risk. Acorns Advisors, LLC, and SEC registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/dogma.
Imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadlines so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
The walls of Jericho came tumbling down a number of times long before any historical Joshua could have existed, and that was because of battering rams and siege ramps and torches, and not because of the Ark of the Covenant, the blast of a ram's horn, and everybody yelling really loud. Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan.
And I'm Dan Beecher.
And you are listening to the Data Over Dogma podcast, where we increase public access to the academic study of the Bible and religion, and we combat the spread of misinformation about the same. How are things today, Dan?
I'm doing better than you are.
That is not difficult to do, but yes, you are doing better than me. I am trying to get over something. It wasn't COVID, but might have been the flu or something like that. I've been hammered.
We postponed this recording as long as we could to give you as much time to recover as possible, and you're still not there yet. But
not 100%. Yeah.
So if this show goes a little short or whatever, hopefully our kind listeners and viewers will cut us some slack.
Yeah. If once we edit out all the coughing fits,
right,
it's down to 14 minutes or so. Give us a break.
What happened? It said it was 60 minutes. What are we doing here? All right. We got a fun show. I'm excited about what we're going to be talking about. We've mentioned him on the show before. Some of our listeners may know that there was a guy named Noah in the Bible.
This is King Noah from the Book of Mormon, right? Is that who we're talking
yes,
about?
Yes, exactly. We're gonna talk about the flood narrative. We're gonna talk about the Noah stories.
Yes.
And I say stories not because it's multiple stories sort of sequentially, but because there's multiple stories at the same time happening, and I think that's going to be fun. We'll call that one a Bible versus Bible segment. And then at the end of the show, or our second segment, we're going to do a chapter and verse, and we're going to talk about those famous fabled walls of Jericho.
Which went tumbling down.
Yes, indeed.
From, as quote the great poet.
Meredith Wilson was where I was going.
Oh man, okay.
Well, that's from The Music Man. The first musical I was ever in. I played Winthrop in The Music Man.
You played who?
Winthrop. Little kid. I was the kid.
Yeah.
In The Music Man. Yeah.
Okay, so you didn't get to sing Shapoopy.
I know. I didn't. It's the most fun number in the show.
Yeah.
If for no other reason than you get to repeat the word poopy all the time.
Yeah, it's just a nonsense word. I really enjoy Trouble. That was my, that was the one that I really enjoyed.
Well, that was what I was quoting.
Yeah.
Just remember, my friends, that a handful of trumpet players, but what a handful of trumpet players did to those famous fabled walls of Jericho. Those billiard parlor walls come a tumbling down. All right,
can we sing that? Or that's not public domain, is it?
I don't know. Come at me, Meredith Wilson. We'll see what you got.
For whatever reason, I was thinking Swing Low, those walls of Jericho, and then I'm thinking Blazing Saddles, Swing Low, Chariot. So that's a little glimpse into the nightmare that is my head.
Jericho apparently is frequently referenced in popular culture.
Yes. My brother was once in a band called Housefly Army, and they gave an album of theirs to somebody who went to serve in one of the armed forces and ended up in Serbia, and somehow their album ended up on the radio, and there was a week where they were number one in Serbia, and so they made T-shirts that said Housefly Army number one in Serbia or Bosnia. Bosnia and Herzegovina, I believe, as it's known today. But their favorite song and probably the best song on that album was called Jericho. So
there you go.
I also think of that. So there you go. Yes,
number one in Serbia / Bosnia / Bosnia Herzegovina. All right, good. Let's. But we've got a whole show to do. So let's dive into Bible versus Bible. All right, this week, Bible versus Bible. We're not looking at like a very specific contradiction.
No.
But like a series of like things that don't add up or don't line up.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, a suite of contradictions, you might say. We're going to look at a narrative that when you look at the details, it's like there are a lot of different things going on here. It seems like a bunch of narratives have been interstitched, have been woven together, and we're going to try to tease some of these apart.
I think because I remember reading the story and like there are multiple moments where it's like it kind of jolts you because you thought you understood that it was one thing, and then suddenly it's another thing, and it just keeps sort of contradicting itself as it goes through.
Yeah, and it's there's some repetitions, some couplets, some contradictions, and some things that have led scholars over the years to scratch their heads furiously and to come up with conclusions that basically what we have are a bunch of originally independent traditions, some of which ran parallel to each other, some of which were entirely different, and they were brought together and kind of woven together to create what we have now as the story of Noah and the flood.
Okay.
But I actually want to go back before the flood and start in Genesis 4.
Oh, okay.
And because we've talked about the primeval history. We had David Carr on a while ago, wonderful scholar who just published his own commentary on Genesis 1 through 11. Talked about what's going on in the primeval history. How a lot of these stories are etiologies, stories of origins, where things came from, why they are the way they are. So you really got to think of Aesop's fables. Right. And these stories about, why elephants have trunks and all that kind of stuff. And here it's like
or like Greek mythology where it's like where does lightning come from? Well, it comes from Zeus on the hill or whatever.
Right. And in chapter 4 you have toward the end you have you've got a genealogy here, and you've got Lamech took 2 wives. Ada was one, and the other was Zillah. And then Ada bore Jabal, and this is verse 20. He was the ancestor of those who live in tents and have livestock. Okay, so we're talking about where certain groups of people that we know today. Now, not not the dude wearing the X-Men T-shirt today,
right?
But the we of whoever the audience of Genesis 4 is, okay, those people over there who live in tents and have livestock, they descend from Jabal. His brother's name was Jubal, and he was the ancestor of all those who play the lyre and pipe. Zillah bore Tubal-Cain, who made all kinds of bronze and iron tools. And we saw him in the Noah movie, Aronofsky's Noah movie. The sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. But we've got these stories about where these groups of people came from, except they're all supposed to have been killed in this flood
Right.
that happened. And so there would be no connection between these people and the folks that dwell in tents today. And
I mean,
and
it's
so
also obviously a very weird thing to say. Everyone who plays music came from one person, and everyone who lives in a tent came from another person. It just, I mean, that's obviously just not how civilization works.
Well, I think, and ethnicities were divided according to features like this. I think anciently, I think a lot of identity markers were like that, where it was like the nomadic peoples are they're this ethnic group over here, and today you can have people who are somebody may not know a lick of English, may have spent their entire life growing up in San Francisco speaking Hmong, maybe 100% American. Ethnicity is a very different category today, but anciently.
So the idea is that there's that nomadic tribe is the tent and livestock nomadic tribe, and those guys over there, I don't know what we call them, but they play the lyre and the pipe all the time. So we'll just call them the lyre and pipe people.
Yeah.
That's the idea. Okay.
I think these are the ways they characterize these ethnic groups. But they're supposed to descend from these people who ostensibly all died in the flood.
Right.
So
it would have been smarter to put that particular bit of text after the flood.
Yeah. So we have this indication that at least this part of this genealogy is not aware of a great worldwide flood. And another indication of this is the fact that this genealogy in Genesis 4 sounds an awful lot like the same genealogy in Genesis 5 that ends with Noah.
Oh, okay.
And so because you've got Cain, she conceived and bore Enoch. To Enoch was born Irad. To Irad was Mehujael. To Mehujael was Methushael, and then Lamech.
Right.
And then when you go to 5, you've got Seth, Enosh, Kenan, not of Ivory Wayans fame,
No.
but Kenan, Mahalalel. Then Mahalalel went to Jared, and Irad and Jared are spelled the same way in Hebrew.
Okay.
And then after Jared, you've got Enoch. Wait a minute, we already had Enoch in the other one as well.
Right.
And then after that, you have Methuselah, which is an awful lot, very close to Methushael.
Right.
And so you've got, and then Methuselah became the father of Lamech, who's also in the Genesis 4 genealogy. So we've got two genealogies that line up in a bunch of ways, but these are supposed to be entirely different stories,
right?
Which is indicative of two different traditions that have run parallel to each other to some degree, and then they're being put on the same scroll one after the other. So,
and also a really good indication of how trustworthy. If we assume that these two genealogies were supposed to be the same set of genealogies that just sort of evolved on their own as they were passed down, probably orally from from one generation to the next in parallel, it shows us how reliable that way of transmitting information actually was anciently, and how we maybe shouldn't count on them to be factually useful.
Yeah, oral transmission was pretty ripe for exploitation, manipulation when it became necessary. When it wasn't necessary, it could be incredibly accurate. But if someone is incentivized to change it, there's less stopping them when it comes to oral transmission than there is with textual transmission.
Well,
So anyway,
and all it takes is one sloppy historian, and you got something new.
yeah. And so we've got these two genealogies. One of them is like, and that leads to Noah. And guess what's going to happen with Noah? And the other is like, yeah, these are all the people who were the ancestors of all these weirdos that we live around today.
Right.
Totally unaware of what's going on in Genesis 6. And then we get to Genesis 6, and we've got those scamps, the B'nai Elohim, the children of God, who develop a bit of a fancy for the daughters of humanity, and so they descend and take some of them as wives and have children that may or may not be identified as the Nephilim, the warriors, the heroes of old. Right. And God is like, ooh boy, does not like what's going on downstairs, and so decides says, I will blot out from the earth the humans I have created, people together with animals and creeping things and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. And yes, the text quite literally and indisputably says that God regrets having made humanity, is sorry that they created humanity.
Whatever our episode was where we talked about God being sorry.
Yeah. So the no regrets dogma, that crowd, I'm afraid you're not very interested in what the Bible actually says. But and then enter Noah, stage left. Noah is a man of the not quite a man of the cloth, but a man of the soil, as we're going to find out.
Yeah.
But we're not there yet. In chapter 6, Noah is described as a righteous man, blameless in his generation. And I want to bring this up because I want to correct a particularly heinous way that people have gone about interpreting this.
Okay.
Blameless in his generation is, the word could be interpreted to mean perfect. And people were like, well, only the Lord was perfect. So they reject the identification of Moses as blameless in his generation.
Noah. You said Moses.
Do I just say why do I keep doing that? This is not the first time I've misspoken and said Moses when I meant Noah. So anyway, blameless in his generation, perfect in his generation is whatever. There are people out there who are like, this is coming right after we have had the Nephilim, these fallen angels, corrupt human bloodlines by having children. And so what it really means is that Noah is the only pure blood human left on earth. Everybody else is a mud blood. Everybody else has been corrupted with angel DNA. And this is an attempt to try to rationalize why God would kill everyone else.
Right.
Women, children, babies, men, everyone in between, and for whatever reason save Noah. And so but if your solution is they were pure bloods, you have stumbled upon an awful solution, which leads to ideas about being pure of blood.
Right.
And other people not being pure of blood. So,
which is funny because if you believe in the Noah narrative, then everybody is descended from him. So we're all pure. Everyone on the earth is of equal purity.
Well, in the 19th century, there were actually some folks, it was certainly not the majority of white folks, but there were some folks who insisted that black folks were not descended from Noah. They were actually, yes.
They had their own boat, I guess.
We won't get into that story. Maybe another time we can talk about that. But don't repeat that idiotic theory about what it means for Noah to be blameless in his generation. Basically, Noah was doing everything right because the line that we draw between perfect and imperfect today wasn't really relevant to the audience for Genesis chapter 6 back in the middle of the first millennium BCE. So, stop doing that because it's gross. So then I want to get to the end of chapter 6. God is like, all right, Noah, I'm killing everybody except for you. And I guess your wife and kids too, and their wives, because, you got to repopulate the earth, so enjoy.
Yeah.
But God says to Noah, verse 19, and of every living thing of all flesh, you shall bring 2 of every kind into the ark, to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female. Of the birds, according to their kinds, and of the animals, according to their kinds, and of every creeping thing of the ground, according to its kind, 2 of every kind shall come into you to keep them alive. And also take with you every kind of food that is eaten to store it up, and it shall serve as food for you and for them. Noah did this. He did all that God commanded him. So how many animals did Noah bring on the ark? 2 of every kind.
Right.
No qualifications there. All the birds, all the animals, all the creeping things, every living kind of animal on the planet, 2.
Right. And that's what we see, when you look at a depiction of it or whatever.
When you see the 2 lions, both of them with the big manes.
Right, exactly.
Making their way onto the ark.
Inevitably, if someone draws a cartoon of Noah, herding animals onto an ark, you're going to see 2 male lions. That's just a guaranteed.
That's required. That's just how it works. So it's like, well, they got to know they're lions, and if we draw a female lion, they're not going to know it's a lion.
Yeah. If saving more and spending less is one of your top goals for 2025, why are you still paying insane amounts of money every month for wireless? Switching to Mint Mobile is the easiest way to save this year. As the first company to sell premium wireless service online only, Mint Mobile lets you maximize your savings with plans starting at $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan.
Yeah, we've been doing this for 2 of our oldest daughters for several months now, and it's been incredibly low maintenance, very easy. My daughter and I actually just went to Canada earlier this month, and as we were coming up on the border, I realized that I hadn't done any kind of international data plan on my phone, and I was like, oh no, what's going to happen? And we crossed the border, and both my phone and my daughter's phone immediately lost their data, and then hers immediately popped up with a text saying, welcome to Canada. And it was from Mint Mobile and came with instructions on what to do to get her data up and running. And she actually had it up and running well before I was able to get mine on my own phone up and running. So it was incredibly handy.
All the plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's limited time deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month.
To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/dogma. That's mintmobile.com/dogma. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/dogma.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speeds slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
Still getting around to that fix on your car? You got this. On eBay, you'll find millions of parts guaranteed to fit. Doesn't matter if it's a major engine repair or your first time swapping your windshield wipers. eBay has that part you need, ready to click perfectly into place for changes big and small. Loud or quiet. Find all the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. But you already know that. eBay. Things, people, love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
And then we get to chapter 17. Screen goes dark. Suddenly, we've got a new setting. Then the Lord said to Noah, "Go into the ark, you and all your household, for I have seen that you alone are righteous before me in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of all clean animals, the male and its mate, and a pair of the animals that are not clean, the male and its mate, and 7 pairs of the birds of the air also, male and female, to keep their kind alive on the face of all the earth. For in 7 days I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and every living thing that I've made I will blot out from the face of the ground." And Noah did all that the Lord had commanded him.
Yeah.
Suddenly, the story changes.
Right. That's more than 1 pair.
Yeah. It's 14 of all the clean kinds of animals, and then 2 of all the unclean kinds of animals.
What does clean mean in this case? Edible,
Clean,
like within the Levitical law or something?
Yeah. And the idea seems to be appropriate for sacrifice, but yeah, appropriate for eating as well. But what we seem to have here are two different sets of instructions. One set of instruction is concerned about ritual purity and sacrificial actions and things like that. And then the other set of instructions does not seem to care.
Right.
And one of the things that happens is as soon as they get off the boat, they offer sacrifices.
Right.
And so you got to have animals to sacrifice because they're not on there long enough for most of the animals that can be sacrificed to reproduce.
To have been busy enough to do the thing.
Most of it's probably going to be spent vomiting from the seasickness because these are land animals. And did you remember Waterworld, don't you?
Oh my gosh, Waterworld was
sorry to bring that up again.
It's an incredible show and everybody should watch it, but not because it's good.
Yeah, some of us had to live through the whole it actually being released in the theaters finally, and then actually going to see it. But the part where he gets on the dry land and it's kind of like,
right.
That I always think about that part when I think about Noah and them getting off the ark.
You ever done that? Have you ever spent like enough time on the sea that when you get back on the land, like there's several hours of the land just being wobbledy?
I have not. I try to avoid as much as possible spending time on the sea. I think the apart from taking boats here and there and between little islands in the middle of nowhere in the Pacific, which is some time. I think I took a ferry from the main island of Malta out to Gozo, one of the smaller islands, and that was probably the most time I spent on the sea. And we didn't get to do our cruise, so I didn't get to spend
right. Yes,
but I get off a treadmill and I'm kind of like, whoa, and it takes me a while to get recalibrated. So we've got these two different sets of commandments regarding how many animals to bring on the ark, which indicates, again, two different stories were going on, and both of these things end with, and Noah did everything that God commanded him. And scholars have noted this for a long time. In fact, the first scholars to say, hey, it looks like there are multiple sources. Jean Astruc, a French scholar from the 17th century, I think was the first to say, I bet Moses had multiple different sources that he wove together to create what we have now. And he was a theologian. He was a faithful Christian. It's not like he wasn't one of these, wasn't a proto-Marxist coming into
to try and ruin everybody's faith.
Yeah. And so, like, scholars have noticed this for a long, long time. But these days, most scholars divide it up into at least two different stories about the flood, each with its own beginning, middle, and end. And you still have pretty internally coherent and comprehensive stories when you disentangle the different narratives. And how many animals to bring on board is just one of the what are called couplets. And couplet is where you have two different or the same story told twice, either in quick succession or nearby, and they but they're told slightly differently. Right. So another one would be somebody going to spend time in a city and going in and telling their wife, "Tell everybody I'm your sister," and then the leader of the city getting the hots for the sister. And then God punishing the city, and then the guy having to go, okay, she's not really my sister, she's my wife. That happens twice in the book of Genesis, in very different times. Like they're not one after the other, but that's an example of a literary couplet. And so we've looked at texts that we know came together incrementally over long periods of time. And this is one of the things that is present frequently when people are putting text together from earlier sources. So couplets is one example of that.
Okay.
And then go ahead.
We've got either 14 or 2 of all the animals we're gathering them on the boat.
Mm-hmm.
All right, what's next? Sorry,
Well-
I'm jumping the gun here.
We've got a few different accounts of how long whatever was going on went on, because in the 100th year of Noah's life, second month on the 17th day of the month, on that day all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were open. The rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. So we got.
I'm just gonna jump back. You're sick, so it's fine. I think you said in the 100th year, and it's the 600th.
Oh, 600. Excuse me. Yes, 600th year. I was about to say I thought it was 600th. Yeah, I skipped over that. So then we have the rain stopped, the waters. Chapter 8. The fountains of the deep and the windows of the heavens were closed, and rain from the heavens was restrained, and the waters gradually receded from the earth. At the end of 150 days, the waters had abated. And in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. The waters continued to abate until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, the tops of the mountains appeared. And then it says, at the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made and sent out the raven, and it went to and fro until the waters were dried up from the earth. So we've got long periods of time, 150 days, the waters abated, but then we go back to 40.
Yeah.
So like the stories like it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, and it stopped raining, and then Noah let the bird out.
Right.
And then we've also got, hey, there were another like 110 days or maybe 150 days where the boat was just kind of adrift, but it wasn't raining anymore, and the waters were just slowly abating. Right. And scholars have pointed this out as well for a long time. When you look at the chronology, it does not add up. Something is wrong here with the chronology. And then you've got sending out a dove and sending out it's a raven, right? And then it says in the 601st year, in the first month, on the first day of the month, the waters were dried up from the earth. Again, this is considered evidence by scholars that we've got multiple different stories here that are being combined.
Right.
So it's unclear exactly what the original story was, if there was an original story.
Right.
But
wouldn't it? I mean, isn't it? It seems likely that it was original stories, right? I mean, certainly we've talked about how the Epic of Gilgamesh has a flood story. There were lots of flood stories floating around.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was probably at least inspired by like the central and northern hill countries of Israel. Like flooding is not a problem there. It is the plains of Mesopotamia where the annual floods are critical for their agriculture, and where when the floods don't come, or when the floods are erratic or get too high, that it can be phenomenally destructive to their agriculture and their infrastructure. And the same is true of Egypt. That's where flooding is a problem. When you're living at the tops of mountains, flooding is less frequently something that keeps you up at night.
Right.
And so, just like tornadoes, if they're like, there was this great tornado and it took everybody, it's like, maybe that originates in Kansas and not in the tops of the mountains. But so most likely this is borrowed from Mesopotamia, and probably when folks were in Mesopotamia, or at least under the thumb of Mesopotamia, and were influenced by their literature. So they're probably taking from the traditions that are in circulation in the middle of the first millennium BCE, traditions about devastating floods, and it becomes the flood of the whole earth. And then we get this weird story. We've talked about it before at the end of chapter 9. Where verse 20 starts out, Noah, a man of the soil, was the first to plant a vineyard.
And I'm going to have to cut you off there and say that I don't care what translator says what. And husbandman is what I want.
And
for all time.
And you know why it has an, right?
Because H's weren't pronounced, right?
Yeah, right. It was an husbandman.
An husbandman,
right? And this is a funny. So for other members of the LDS faith, something funny about the fact that we use the Blaney version of the King James version is it still has Anne. Anne helpmeet.
Right.
Eve is Anne helpmeet. What's funny is when Joseph Smith was working on his translation of the Bible and creating the Book of Moses and the Book of Abraham and all this kind of stuff, he was using an updated edition of the King James Version that changed that so that it said a helpmeet and a husbandman. So he was like, "Nah, we're not going to do the old stuff. We're gonna bring in the updated stuff." And this was actually an American edition of the King James Version, sure. And we have since been like, "Nah, we're going to go back to the old stuff." So if you look in like the Book of Abraham and stuff, it says a helpmeet, and then you go to our official translation of the Bible into English, the King James Version, and it's like an helpmeet, governor.
I love it
because we're like, nah, we don't want to. Joseph Smith was up in the night. We're going to go back.
It sounds fancier and more weirder.
Yeah. So he was a man of the soil anyway. Was the first to plant a vineyard. And
that seems like a mean way to call him dirty. He was a man of the soil.
Doesn't this sound like the way you would begin a story though?
Yeah.
It's like, imagine, you've just watched an hour and 15 minutes of the Noah movie, and then it's like you have a new scene, and it's like, now there was this dude named Noah, and he was a man of the soil. Yeah.
Wait, once upon a time, what's happening?
We know this guy, yeah. He drank some of the wine and became drunk, and he lay uncovered in his tent, and higgledy-piggledy, we know that story. And we've discussed this story at length before, but the point we want to make here is that it certainly seems like this is another story that was in circulation independently of the flood narrative. That was
right.
Just like, hey,
this is the origin of that delicious drink that we all like.
And so which gets us back to Genesis 4. It's like so and so was they're the origin of the people who dwell in tents, and so they're the origin of the people who wear pleated slacks, and these are the origins of the people who wear flat front pants, and they're the origins of the cargo shorts, and then then there was this dude Noah, and he was a man of the soil, and he planted a vineyard, and so we've got another etiology for viticulture. This is where we get the folks who grow wine and grow grapes and make wine and stuff like that. And then we get this weird story where Canaan, who's not even supposed to be there yet, gets cursed because of whatever.
Because of the most weirdly conceived story of all time.
Yeah, so it's a bizarre collection of stories, but it is precisely that. It is a collection of stories, and it has been woven, I was going to say competently, but maybe not so competently. I mean, if they're trying to hide their stitches, they're not doing a great job of it. You see an awful lot of seams in here. You can tell that these things were probably part of another story. So I think, and many scholars would agree, that initially Noah was really just the first viticulturist. Okay. And that the flood story was added later, and it was like, well, just put it after the Tubal-Cain stuff, but before the Table of Nations and him getting drunk and something weird going on in his tent stuff. And so the flood is an interjection into what was probably initially just a very brief story about this dude who is a good warning story about why you shouldn't get too drunk.
Yeah, and also don't and be an husbandman if you can. All right.
Yes,
I like that.
And Noah, by the way, Noah means rest. And so, the story there at the end has Noah resting.
Okay.
It was, but a lot of people will try to read the Noah's name into the story of the flood. It's like it makes much better sense as a name associated with the first viticulturist.
Yeah.
Than it does
the flood narrative provides very little that seems restful. There's almost nothing that feels like, he's a guy who, by hand, with maybe the help of his sons, built the most enormous boat that has ever been built up until that point. There's nothing restful about it. And he did it as a 600-year-old man. It's not a restful story.
Or a historical one. Yes,
right.
All right. He's the guy who's like, I need to lay down. Yeah, that's our viticulturist.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Well, from there, let's take a journey into our chapter and verse. And this time, we're heading to we've finally made it. We've emerged from the Pentateuch into Joshua.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like what we have is we're following the story of the Exodus. We're following the story of Moses. Moses is gone now. Joshua has taken over as the leader, and they're on a rampage.
Yes.
So guide us through, like, what are we doing here? It's, these guys, these people just came out of Egypt. They were just freed. They are, they've been wandering in the desert for 40 years or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And now it's time for them to just start destroying people?
So Moses was told he wasn't going to be allowed to enter the promised land. The best he got was he got to see the promised land from across the valley. And so Joshua is really the story of the generation that gets to enter the promised land, because he and Caleb were supposed to be the only ones who gave the honest reports when they were sent as spies. And so the old generation has all died off, and this is the new generation that has arisen. And but the problem is people already occupy the promised land.
Yeah, that seems like a problem.
Yeah. So instead of just saying, "Hey, can we come a little over here? You got some space?" And they want to run them out, and because it's like they already got the buildings built. Why would we want to take the time to build more buildings?
I mean, they've got buildings. They've got a big wall. The walls won't end up being useful later on.
Yeah, we don't need those. And so they have to engage in this conquest. And there's the conquest narrative is among the most disturbing. I mean, it starts back with Moses and Ammonites and everything that they've and they weren't collecting Ammonite fossils. They were genociding the Ammonite people,
right?
At least trying, and then keeping the women as sex slaves or as concubines. So pretty awful stuff. And then Joshua and Judges is like, and here's how they routed everybody. And it's human sacrifice, because what they have to do is purge the land of these people who are not worthy to be there. And so they engage in what is called cherem, which is a word that is translated a variety of different ways. Devoted to destruction is one way to think of it. But basically, it's that you've got to destroy all of this stuff so that it is devoted to God. You are not keeping any of it for yourselves, whether animals or property or people. Everything gets destroyed. And by so doing, by sacrificing everything, the land is purged of the evil that is the people of Canaan. So it's human sacrifice.
Dogs and cats living together.
Yeah.
Mass hysteria.
Mass hysteria, indeed. And so it's awful, it's horrific, and it didn't happen. Like a lot of people get rightfully upset about this rhetoric, and it's not historical. It didn't happen.
Build a routine with Ollie that supports your wellness needs, like getting your daily vitamins and minerals with Ollie's multi-gummies, or keeping your mood upbeat with all the vitamin D in Hello Happy. Give your gut health some support with probiotics, and wake up feeling refreshed after taking Ollie Sleep. Do wellness on your terms. Find Ollie at a Walmart or Target near you, or at ollie.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Since you're new to H&R Block, we'll look at your returns from the last 3 years for any money your last guy might have missed, for free.
I could get money back from last year?
You could. We'll find any mistakes.
Could have really used that 2 years ago when I dated that mistake for 5 months.
Don't leave money on the table. Switch to H&R Block and get a free second look review. Second look is included at no additional cost with the purchase of tax preparation. Results vary. All tax situations are different. Fees apply if you have us file an amended return.
So Jericho is kind of the main event for this the start of their routing of the people of Canaan.
Do we think there was an actual historical Jericho? Is this a real place?
I have been to the historical Jericho, yes.
Okay.
In fact, when
don't
you
act
go,
like I'm dumb for asking. I don't know that.
Jericho is the oldest, more or less continually inhabited city on Earth. So if you go there, there's a sign that says "World's Oldest City" or "World's First City" or something like that.
Oh, okay.
And so it's kind of a tell. It's a big hill that sticks up around the geography around it. It's next to some cliffs and mountains and things like that, but it's on a relatively flat land in the Jordan River Valley, and it's just northwest of the northern end of the Dead Sea. So if you're like in Qumran and you head out of Qumran, you turn left, you head north, and then you've got a road that goes west, and that takes you up over the hills to get into Jerusalem, or if you can turn right and you head up to Jericho. So it's in the West Bank. It is Palestinian territory right now. Some lovely restaurants there, some lovely souvenir and tourist shops there, and then you can go to the Tell, which is where Jericho is, and they've been excavating it for many years.
All right. Well, put a pin in that because you're going to have to explain something to me at the end of this story then.
Okay.
Okay. Now let's go back. They arrive at Jericho.
Yeah.
And we'll skip the spies that they sent in and the sex worker who protects them,
Rahab. Mm-hmm.
They do the whole thing where the Lord tells them how to take the city.
Yeah,
and it involves marching around the city.
Yep.
Once a day until the final day, where they do it 7 times. Right, 7 times around the city.
Yep.
They blow their horns and then scream,
and all the people will shout. Yeah,
and that shouting and horn blowing is sufficient to crumble the walls, the city walls, and then they just go in and kill everybody.
Yeah, and they're marching. They're marching the Ark of the Covenant,
right,
around the city, and the walls come a tumbling down, and that allows you to get into the city, because that was your defense anciently. Was your city? You built the city up on a hill, and you built walls around it, and that just made it that much more difficult to get up over the walls and to get into the city to access the people that you would like to unalive.
Right.
And so you had siege ramps that would be built up. You would fire arrows at them. You would, stop up their wells and their springs to try to, starve them out and stuff. And God's solution is just, what if I just make the walls fall down?
Right.
And
it's an elaborate methodology. But apparently that was, I'll tell you what, it would feel weird and intimidating for people in a city, in a walled city, to have this group of people just every day they march around your city and blow their horns and whatever. That would feel weird.
It would be a little off-putting, yeah. It's one way to put it. And what's interesting is these are casemate walls, which means that, or from the story, it sounds like that.
Right.
There's a part where Rahab is actually, she's got a ribbon tied around, or tied to the window or something like that, which means that her window or her house would have had to have been built into the city wall. And that's the case with, and that's frequently the case, particularly with casemate walls. And casemate walls are where you've got like 2 walls, and there's several feet to several yards of space between them, and then they're filled in with rubble or something like that to make them thicker.
There you go.
Yeah. And it is, it's just supposed to fall down. And there's a theory that the reason they came up with this story is because Jericho was around. It would not have been there. We have no indication that it was a walled city or that those walls came a-tumbling down anywhere near where the historical Joshua would have had to have been located.
Okay.
We have indications that this was a fortified city earlier in the Bronze Age, and that there were destruction levels associated with some of those earlier fortified cities. But basically, the last time Jericho had significant walls, and we have evidence that those walls were destroyed, at least in part. You didn't go down and destroy all the walls. You just destroyed enough of the wall to get through.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, keep knocking it down. All right, now go around the other side. Now we got to quit. You got one part.
Well, you guys are in trouble when we finish demolishing this wall.
Yeah. It was usually just, there was one or two spots where you would find a big hole in the wall.
Yeah.
Unless they managed to set fire to everything and other parts crumbled. But the most significant and the latest destruction layer from that time period dates to about 1550 BCE. Which is long before any historical Moses could have been born. So it clearly has nothing to do with any historical Joshua that came through. But the story could have been told because they were aware of the fact that there were these big walls that had fallen down in Jericho. Okay. So that might account for what's going on there. But there's the archaeological data do not line up with the biblical account. So there are certainly folks who will be like, no, the new Italian archaeological report says that there was a wall that they discovered, and there may have been a wall associated with a very small settlement at Jericho in the 14th or the 13th centuries BCE, but there's no evidence of any destruction associated with that wall at any point. So the archaeological data is not going to come to the salvation of this story. The walls of Jericho came tumbling down a number of times long before any historical Joshua could have existed, and that was because of battering rams and siege ramps and torches, and not because of the Ark of the Covenant, the blast of a ram's horn, and everybody yelling really loud.
Right. And that is the thing that actually does it, isn't it? It's the yelling, that actually takes down the walls.
And then you shall shout.
Yeah. And then in verse 21 of Joshua, what is this? Or Joshua 6.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 21. They devoted to destruction by the edge of the sword, all in the city, both men and women, young and old, oxen, sheep, and donkeys.
Mm-hmm.
That's not very nice.
No, that's that idea of harem, where everything is supposed to be destroyed as it's a bit of costly signaling. It's saying we just want to show you all we're not doing this so that we can take all this for ourselves. We're doing this because God told us, and so we're going to destroy all the goods that we would be expected to take. Right, as to signal to you that we're serious about this. This is God said so.
They burned down the city and everything in it. Only the silver and gold and the vessels of bronze and iron they put into the treasury of the house of the Lord. So that's just for the priests to use, I guess.
Right.
And everything else they're not supposed to have any booty. And we've talked about the story in the next chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Of what's his name, and his wife who took a little bit of something.
Yes. And the end of chapter 6 says, Joshua then pronounced this oath, saying, "Cursed before Adonai be anyone who tries to build this city, Jericho. At the cost of his firstborn he shall lay its foundation, and at the cost of his youngest he shall set up its gates. So the Lord was with Joshua, and his fame was in all the land," which is suggestive to me of the composition of this story in a time period when it was like, look, the walls were fallen down and the city was never rebuilt.
So when I read that, this is me pulling the pin from earlier. When I read that part, I thought it meant you're not supposed to rebuild this city ever. And if you try to, then your firstborn's gonna die and blah blah blah. But obviously, you've been to it, so someone rebuilt it. Wasn't that supposed to be a bad thing?
Well, I've been to the ruins, but yeah, there were people who settled around the ancient tell.
Okay.
There were certainly people who occupied Jericho, the actual tell, the hill itself, after the 14th and 13th centuries BCE. So if we are to take this story seriously, Joshua was ignored.
Okay.
More likely what's going on is in a later period when it was maybe abandoned again, they were looking at the city and were like, oh, it's so old and it's got walls that fell down. Oh, okay. and I bet it's been like that since Joshua. So we'll just tell the story like he cursed anybody who tried to rebuild it.
Okay.
But the city of Jericho now is quite large, and none of it is actually located on the tell. The tell is just an archaeological site. So now Jericho spreads out significantly around the tell.
Okay.
And it was
he was cursing anyone who builds on the hill, but if you go next to it, you're okay.
It's like how close can my property line get? All right, I'm putting this stick. Is this
where's
stick
the curse
okay?
line? Where does the curse end?
Yeah, does it have to go up the hill, or is it? And the whole reason Jericho was a city and was so important was because there's a natural spring right next to it, and still going today. So there was a constant source of water
in a desert land right next to a dead sea. I can see how a spring, a natural spring, would be exactly where you put a city.
That works.
It is the foundation, in fact, of the promised land. Apparently. All right. Well, there you go. We have Jericho. We tumbling down. The walls come tumbling down. I think that's very interesting. I don't know what to make of it all, other than interesting story that doesn't really. I mean, I don't know what we learn from it in terms of it being useful to modern readers, other than just a story.
Yeah,
about a bunch of mass murder.
Well,
all right.
Yeah, there's definitely genocide. Definitely features heavily.
Yes.
In the story.
Yeah. All right. Well, friends, if you would like to help us become a part of our creation of this show, and also, you can participate in fun conversations over on Patreon, please feel free to become a patron of the show. Go to patreon.com/Data Over Dogma. You can sign up. You can get the access to the after party. There's extra content every week. It just helps us. It's it's our main source of income, and we really appreciate all of our patrons dearly. If you'd like to write into us, it's contact@dataoverdogmapod.com, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Bye, everybody.
Data Over Dogma is a member of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. It is a production of Data Over Dogma Media, LLC, copyright 2024, all rights reserved.
Have you ever gazed in wonder at the Great Pyramid? Have you marveled at the golden face of Tutankhamun? Or admired the delicate features of Queen Nefertiti? If you have, you'll probably like the History of Egypt podcast. Every week, we explore tales of this ancient culture. The History of Egypt is available wherever you get your podcasting fix. Come, let me introduce you to the world of ancient Egypt.
Are you interested in the parts of history that remain a mystery? Do you want to learn more about the historical myths and misconceptions used to prop up false belief today? I'm Nathaniel Lloyd. In my podcast, Historical Blindness, I delve into all of these topics, sharing puzzling tales from the past and examining hoaxes, conspiracy theories, and misremembered events that provide insight into modern politics and religion. New episodes every 2 weeks. Find Historical Blindness on most podcast players and platforms.
Are you earning and investing in the stock market? In real estate? How about in relationships? Are you earning and investing in your life? I'm Doc G, semi-retired hospice physician and host of the Earn and Invest podcast, where we have the 201 or next level conversations about money and life. Not only how you make money and grow it, but also how you use your wealth to create a better and more fulfilling existence. Join us every Monday and Thursday wherever you listen to fine podcasts.